Good, good morning. I was just waiting for you. Good morning. Welcome to Community Voice. I'm your host, Keith Parris. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. Good morning, Debo, Carvey, Michelle. Good morning.
Morning, bro.
How's it? Oh, good morning, bruh. I got a good morning, bruh. I got a GMB.
That's better than what I got this
And I heard. You got a GMB
Yeah,
too.
I did too. You're right, Carvin. I got a GMB too. Few more letters in it though, but see that? I told you. Yeah.
You are very
I
sharp.
told you you've tainted him. He is
Tainted.
he's
He is
tainted.
tainted. Well, I was going to do Wednesday's Word Acuity, but I'm not going to do it today because when I have a couple of guests, and today is the anniversary of the Million Man March. 29 years ago, we assembled ourselves on the mall, Washington D.C., as we faced the Capitol. Later on in the program, we'll have Student Minister William Muhammad on, and we'll talk about that. But man, 29 years later, I'm still getting goosebumps when I think about it. Was interesting. Rhonda texted me on the way in and asked me, was I doing anything on the Million Man March? I have pictures where Rhonda, my mom, and my oldest nephew, Gary was little, and we went to the airport. And there's a picture of us in the airport waiting to fly out. And then I tell the story on that plane, with the exception of me. Who's who in terms of black leadership, black male leadership was on that plane. Howard Fuller was on that plane. Commander McGee was on that plane. Marvin Pratt was on that plane. Gary George was on that plane. Spencer Coggs was on that plane. Who else was riding with us?
Did you say Eugene Kane?
Kane didn't ride with us.
Okay.
No. And then I think Newman was still in Congress. He was down Racine, that Racine area. He was on the plane with us. It was fascinating. Now I got a Gary George. Oh God, I can forget Carl G. Carl G is the reason why a lot of them are out there. Carl G. Who's this other guy? His number two, William. No, my guy. I can't think of my guy's name. William Clay. Yeah. So it was who's who. If that plane would have went down, there goes black leadership. Male leadership anyway in the city,
with the exception of you, as you stated.
With the exception of me, to this day, I still don't know how I got on that flight.
Right.
And I didn't think I was going to be able to go. I had.
Don't sell yourself short.
He always does that.
Don't sell yourself.
Oh,
short.
1995.
You're self-deprecating.
In 1995, who knew me? Nobody knew me in 1995.
When you doing the show?
No.
At that time with your mama?
Mm-mm.
Y'all hadn't started yet?
We hadn't started until like the 2000s.
You was just a child support dude?
I wasn't even child support dude. I was food stamp dude then.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was doing food stamps. So that was very interesting. But I didn't think I was going to go. I had a lung abscess and really sick, man. I'd lost like 30 pounds. It was bad. It was really bad. And what a crazy year. 95 has probably been one of the more eventful years in my life. I got married in 1995. And we got married in April. In September, I get the lung abscess. We go to the emergency room. The guy said, well, it could be bronchitis or cancer. What do you think my wife heard? Cancer. And Francine just happened to be in town for a wedding. And so of course, Rhonda going to tell Francine. And so Francine, they come by the house looking at me just like she's ready to cry. So I'll never forget, it was that following Tuesday because I had to go to the doctor on Monday. Francine called, how are you? Negro, I ain't dying. But have you ever been so sick you wish you were dead? That's kind of where. Oh man,
not that I wish that I was dead, but I
when
will
you get toxins in your body, you get poisons in your body.
Man, you be so
I ain't
sick.
never been that sick.
Here's the one that I had when I was so sick, man, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong, and you just kept being sick. So the worrying, not certain of what it is, that's that miserable sick for me.
Right.
But you ain't wishing you was dead.
No, you wanted to.
No,
you wanted to stop.
If
you wanted to stop,
if I'm going,
but I don't want it to stop that way. Look,
pain can get that bad.
I want to be clear. Until the last ounce of fight.
Got that Negro in you.
Nobody better not pull no plug. Nobody better not be talking about something. Do not resuscitate. I better not have none of that in place. I mean,
No
to
DNR,
none
no.
to the last
Jimmy
second.
Terran told this story at his mom's Martha's funeral. His sister had power of attorney.
Oh yeah, I was there.
Remember? And so he had power of attorney. And so, you know, she had been coming in and out of consciousness. She'd be in Martha, in and out of consciousness. So the doctor was in the room and he's talking to Sandy and he said, well, you know, she's doing all this, her heart, she's in and out, she's in and out. And so I don't know, do you want us to resuscitate? Jimmy said, my mama woke up. Because Sandy said no. My mama woke up and said, Jimmy, you my power of attorney.
yeah, parents make some real different decisions.
She went out of it. She was like,
no. Every parent know. One of these kids gonna let me go.
Right.
And one of them gonna be like, no.
And don't let it be a spouse. Don't let it be a spouse. A spouse will let you go quicker than your family
But that's why, continue to say, man, tell people what you want. Because my mother had told us. My mother said, do not resuscitate. And when they called me, I was here. My brother was in the hospital with her. And he said, Michelle, she crashed. They trying to ask her, will we bring her back? I said, tell them, let her go.
Yeah.
And thank God. And he didn't know my mother had shared that with me. Mm-hmm. He relied on me as the oldest to make that decision.
Yeah.
And so there was no drama, no fighting. And I mean, that's his ace. We believe my brother had his heart attacks because the doctor said there was no medical explanation other than a broken heart about my mother dying. So that's how close he was to my mom. But he still deferred to me as the older sister.
It's a tough decision. But like I said, your spouse, I just married him. You had him. that's a big, no, I'm serious. It's not to say your spouse don't love you.
Well, but there's
it's not like a mother's love.
It's that incentive called that insurance policy.
The paper. He said depend on the mom.
Yeah, that paperwork.
That paperwork. Policy. That paperwork.
His mama's got some policies on you Negroes too.
I understand.
Y'all don't even know.
Yeah, my grandmother had a policy on my Uncle Money.
Let me tell you right now, especially if you suspect.
Yeah.
Oh, it's some mama's been paying every month on time.
This one gonna pay off real soon.
We sing that song. Well. Somebody prayed for me. My mama prayed for me. Yeah, my mama paid for me too.
Make sure you pay Junebug's policy.
Right.
And then in our family, it got to the point my mom would be like telling my cousins, my other aunties, them who be struggling, you might want to get your policy on Bruce because
that one gonna pay
he
off.
Gonna pay off over
but
here.
Most people, and I don't know. I mean, just when you did your pension for the state, they allowed you to pick your beneficiaries, right? And I heard this with the county. I don't know if it's true with the state. Normally, your husband or wife, your spouse, is your next of kin. But at the county, for your pension, you can put down anybody.
Yeah, there were like my brother got my mother's pension.
Okay.
And she had called. She called me, let me know. So just so it ain't no surprises when everything go down. Your brother getting my pension.
I love you. I'll talk to you later.
So I told her, I said, well, so it ain't no prize when it all go down. When you get sick, don't call me.
My wife used to say that. My wife would say, tell your family, I'm the next of kin. I'm cremating you. Just let them know. And so we talk about marriage, right? And people talk about it. It is business, man. It is.
Well, there's certainly business elements too.
But it's. I mean, it becomes.
We can't have you characterize the whole thing as business.
Hey, I'm singing Tyrese transactional. That's what it feels like.
He always declares that marriage is.
I hear.
When you sign that, you signed the contract.
But again, let's not make it devoid of the emotional love part of it, Keith. Could we not sanitize?
Well, Michelle,
two piece over here.
That's why
I thought it was a 3-piece and a biscuit.
No, she 2-piece.
Just 2-piece.
She 2-piece because she did it twice.
You coming for me?
No, I didn't know, Michelle. Now don't start that.
Yes,
see, there you go.
You do.
What's love got to do with it?
Everything. Bro.
So when
everything.
So when Anna Mae Bullock got divorced from Isaac Turner, we call him Ike. What did she ask for?
She wanted to keep the name.
And what was the name for?
Business.
Vicky Winans.
But she didn't.
She broke up with Marvin Winans. What did she keep?
But
she
that's not
why they got,
But that's not why they got married. You know,
But
you
he's not
can't skip
saying
to
that.
the end.
Nobody's
No,
saying
no,
that.
no, because you can't skip to the end to try to frame out your argument. It's business. It's
Okay,
business.
all right.
They didn't get married.
I ain't gonna let you talk me
necessarily
off
for
this. I'm not gonna
business.
let you talk me down
Well,
on
come
this.
on in, bro.
So
Make
so
your-
so
make-
you
make your
telling
move.
me that the demographics of the men you married was not taken into consideration?
I already conceded that. I
No,
just
you
said that
didn't.
wasn't the only thing.
I didn't say it was the only reason.
But that's the way you talk. Like this is
That
a
ain't the way I
business
talk.
transaction.
No, that ain't how I
It's
talk.
business. It's
That
business.
ain't
It's
how I
business.
talk.
That's all you say. You'll never mention the other side of it.
Like going into
That
Target
somebody
and
love
buying
your
something.
dusty butt. You'll never mention that part. You
Wait a
always-
minute.
The business part. The business
Wait a
part.
minute.
the
I got a
business
dusty butt.
part. You didn't know.
You calling me pig?
Are the kids in school yet?
Yeah, they
You
should be
didn't know?
on their way.
Oh, you was dusty.
They should be on their way.
Yes,
But no, I mean, I think, and then people get disappointed because they still want the love, the passion that you have, and it turns into compassion. It turns into some other things, and but the business part of it is always there.
Yes.
And thank God that Wisconsin's a community property state.
Well, that's true. That
Yeah,
is true.
'cause
This
I
is a
told-
no-fault divorce
I-
state as well.
I
My
told
wife
my
told me
missus-
the other day. She says, you know, the insurance lady came out the other day. We were just going over the policy, making sure everything was good and everything. I'm like, yeah.
Insurance people still come to folks'
Yeah,
house.
Oh, yeah, they come to my house.
Okay.
She
What,
said,
she had a big book.
yeah, but listen,
That's old
She
school for
said-
sure.
I made some changes. I said, well, what kind of changes you made? I said, what you do? She said, well, you know, baby girl was supposed to be the one that's going to be the power of attorney. But she said, you know, a couple times she said it as a joke, but she said, I'm going in the nursing home. So I took her off of that.
Okay.
So she's no longer the one. And you kind of, as your kids grow more, you start to figure out who's going to be the responsible one that's going to do right and share and do the things.
But I mean, you
supposed to do.
also appreciate too, you got the medical power of attorney and you got a financial power of
Mhm.
attorney.
Yeah, this was financial.
And then there is another power of attorney that's needed in death
Mhm.
because that power of attorney
The executive.
ends when you die.
Right.
So there has to be someone else that's also named once you pass. Who
I
will
went
be in
through
charge of
something
that.
similar to that. I guess when my uncle passed. Now he has children who are adult, old as me, but would not. I had to call to get the body picked up. I had to sign the papers, get the death certificate, the whole nine. They did none of that.
Did they call you in to sign for the insurance check?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
well, all right then.
I knew somebody, they had been married years. I mean, they've been married years, and the spouse died, and the spouse that died's children came and said, where's the insurance policy?
Mhm.
Person said, what are you talking about? Been married 26 years. You sorry. It goes to me.
But again, you know, people having these conversations ahead of time because if I did what I needed to do, you're not showing up asking about no insurance policy
Mhm.
because I'm letting you know,
Don't come over
Jump
here.
Street,
Ain't nothing over here for you.
nothing. I've left you nothing.
That's
And-
cold when your parents don't leave you anything.
Well, it just
Give
depends.
it-
Like my
give it to the
mother,
cat.
my mother didn't leave a lot to me.
You didn't
Just
need it.
because
And she felt like you.
yeah,
you
she
didn't.
did. She was like, Michelle ain't gonna live in none of these houses. She ain't gonna do nothing but sell them, which she was right. And
Know her daughter.
yeah, she don't need my pension. You know, she's always made more money. And then thank God, because when my brother gets sick,
He's got
my
something
mother's pension is what's
Right.
been helping to
to
sustain
sustain him.
him.
Yeah.
So, you know, but the cars and stuff, she left that all up to us. But my, you know, I mean, I don't need her cars. You can take them. We gave them stuff to my uncle. But I just tell people, man, put that mess in right, especially if you got more than one child. Like my son walks around smiling every day because his
You know the buck stops
everything is he. It's like well, every little crumb go to him. But then he got his feelings hurt when Atlas came, and so now Atlas named his own policies, and my son is like,
So he thanks you all the time for not being a hoochie.
Carvey.
What if your past family before, like the family that's dealing, like say for instance, what if your mother? Let me go to the mic.
Yeah, because that was getting long and complicated. Y'all
Carvey
ready?
said they,
Keith?
Carvey said they want to hear me.
You ready?
White policy.
Carvey, he's speaking.
So I was asking Michelle, say for instance, what if your mother had problems with distributing the money out, and it was conflict with the family, and um it's now on you for you to decide like who everything go to. But you seen the conflict that happened before, and now you having trouble with distributing.
No trouble.
No, I'm saying, for example, what if like it was trouble before in a generation before you?
No trouble.
Seven,
I'm not even being funny. I'm not,
seven letters.
because I
Lawyer.
would understand what my mother wanted, and that's what would be executed. And so all the outside noise and people stepping up to the plate, I should get, I want, she would have wanted me. If she didn't tell me that, then this is the way it's going to be handled. And she made me the executor because she knew I would handle that. And and that's like the janky part about it, but it's real. That's why I tell people, you got to tell folks what you want.
Well, what if you didn't have no mother? Well, like what if
you're losing us?
So look, what if your mother was gone at an early age of your life?
Okay.
And you had to,
and then in your passing, you
now you having trouble with what to do since you wasn't taught like.
I think
There's
there's a hierarchy, right? Your mother and father, you're next to kin until you get married.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you get married, your spouse becomes your next of kin. Why is that important? Because that's the person who controls everything, right? And then you have, well, if the spouse is gone, then you work your way back through
to
the
siblings.
Right. And we saw this
if there are no children. If there are no children.
Right. Then it's siblings.
Right.
And you saw it with George Floyd. The piece that people missed with George Floyd was how everybody in that family lawyered up. And now it was depending. So the person who got the most or should have gotten the most out of the settlement was his daughter under 18.
Mm-hmm.
And they would probably put her money into a trust, and then have an executor of that trust. And then you work your way back to then it would be, I don't know if his mom was still living. His mom passed, right?
I'm not
so it would be mom, then it worked to his siblings,
mm-hmm.
right? And then you work your way back. But the legal part of it becomes real important. And look,
but if
Michelle's point is well taken.
Let me ask you a question then. So like you just say if that child that he has is not 18, that would be another reason why there needs to be some kind of executor, because it has to go in trust.
The court would assign a trustee, if that's what they do, decide to put the money in trust, which they usually do
until she's of age.
And I knew someone who.
But what about her mother?
Her mother, if she wasn't married to him, has no legal standing. There's no legal standing.
But she could,
other than
she could
inherit from her child.
State, right? Of the
she
child.
Could be, and usually that's what they do. The moms or whoever the kid is staying with becomes the guardian. Well, not the guardian, but the executor of the estate. Because you saw it with technically, Catherine Jackson is the executor of
Joe Jackson's Catherine.
Yes,
she was over Michael's stuff.
She's over Michael's estate, but then Michael gave. Also, there are other executors. Those are the people right now. As a matter of fact, she's suing them. Right, because she's feeling like she's not getting what she thinks she should be getting in terms of money. So there's conflict there. But Michael Jackson was smart. The guys that he ended up bringing back were the guys who made all the money for him before. And so Michael Jackson was like $450 million in debt. And they wiped the debt out. And the estate obviously is making money because it's still Thriller, and the Eagles' greatest hits are still the number 1, number 2 selling albums. They're still selling Thriller. So that, and then all the other music he's done.
Look, because remember he had bought the Beatles catalog,
but he ended up having to give that up.
Selling that or something.
But I'm just saying, he had made in his own right, wherever there were missteps, he had also made some shrewd business decisions.
Definitely.
About money, but again, just keep telling people over and over again, please make people aware of your wishes. And I've said this part before. I said this after one of my good friends. I used to talk to him and he would say, I'm not taking care of any of that when I die. The kids will just have to figure it out.
No, I don't want to do
and
that.
I was like, that's the most selfish mess on the planet, because putting people away is no cheap endeavor. Even on a cremation, you're talking about $3,000 to $5,000 if you do what you're supposed to. Between the cremation and any kind of memorial observance or servants of that person's life. And you know, how many of us right now, if somebody said you need to drop $10,000 because your mother died unexpectedly of a heart attack yesterday, we're able to do that. You cannot say you love people and not set them up to be okay, even in your passing. And so I have tried to stress over and over again to people, take care of your business, man, and make sure that if you can pay on a policy, because the other part of it too is, like my brother was making sure, he was real adamant about making sure he had taken care of his plot and all this kind of stuff. Because my brother know me. I'm not doing all of that. And he was like, this nigga send me out here all any kind of way. And so,
and he knows you.
Yeah, because
in his heart of hearts, he knows.
Well, he know I cremate him, and he don't want to be cremated. Because I'm like, I'm not spending that kind of money to bury you and put you in the ground. It's I could get that to your son. And that could go towards your son's future. I'm not doing that, bro. So my brother know me. He has a set of twins that are 34, and then he has a 12-year-old son.
A what?
Yeah, he was tripping. He got a 12-year-old
34, and then now you got a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He got grandkids that's older than his son.
I'm always fascinated when you have nieces and nephews older than their uncles.
Yeah.
It'd be like, but that's my uncle.
In fact, I take it back. I said they 34. They got to be like 37 now.
He had a long break.
And so so he got uncles. I mean, he has nieces.
He must have got
nieces.
a young
He has
girl.
nephew.
A young girl to bring out. Boy, I'll tell you.
She wasn't that young.
She was young.
But
young
he was
enough
married
to have
to
a
her.
baby.
I mean, my brother's only 55 now, so he was in his early 40s when he had him.
Because we talked about about love children yesterday.
I heard the show, but that's not real late. He was in his early 40s, I think, when he had him.
Yeah, I think you're great, and there are people out there who do estate planning to help you with. You say, well, I don't have much. You got enough for Negroes to go to jail.
Anything you have that is worth leaving behind. I don't care if it's the furniture in your house. Specify
who we go to.
The dining room set go to Michelle. The living room set go to Kayla. The so and so go to this person. Specify it.
Put it out in the field out there because
you'll be surprised at what people start clowning about. All of a sudden, them was my favorite dishes, and we ate on them every Christmas. Like, if y'all get out of here.
She told me I could have them.
Let me tell you, baby, them cast iron pots. Oh yeah. Them well-seasoned cast iron pots. Mm-hmm. Oh, you'll tell your family about some cast iron pots.
My wife was talking about her pots.
Okay. Because and
I don't want some woman up in there use my pots. Oh, I'm gonna get one where won't have to cook. I'm gonna be out every day. Oh, baby, you ain't gotta cook. Don't worry about the pots. Those pots, they go to the museum, baby. What we eating tonight? You
want to say all this out loud right now?
To the Goodwill.
Oh no, the pots ain't going.
The pots ain't going to the Goodwill.
My son is alive.
Yeah, I mean, there's some takers already.
If my son is alive and he hear anything happen to Rhonda Parris's pots, he is on the way.
She's already got Caitlin used to do it. Yeah, so the pots, there's gonna be some battles over pots. I mean, but that was her concern. And then, because we've had this discussion before. Once that spouse is dead, how long do you wait?
For what?
All right, two people.
Wait for what?
All right,
before you remarry.
Before you remarry, before you hook
nobody
up.
better.
Not even necessarily remarry, because like for me, I always say, if 65. I ever get out of this one, I'll never do it again.
Don't say that. That's
I'll never marry.
George Carlin did that. George Carlin talked about his wife. Oh, she went through my drugs. She went through the ups and downs of my career. She was with me when I had cancer. And I told my daughter, no, not after your mom. I'll never love again. He met somebody 6 months later. He waited a year to tell his daughter, though. Mm-hmm. Because that happens. That person is gone.
But we're talking about marriage. There's a difference. Dating and just
no. He ended up marrying.
Yeah, but I'm saying I'll never marry again.
If Debo, if you get to a certain age, and I hate to put it out there,
well, wait a minute.
Financially, it wouldn't benefit you if you at a certain age. Talking about you married,
trying to marry him anyway. Other than Jackie,
there's a 23-year-old out there.
23. She looking at timeline. The timeline. He ain't got long.
That check, put me on there. Put me on the check.
Y'all need to stop telling Keisha business. Keisha need them all Social Security age. I got to be bothered long.
All I got to do is be trained a little home health care. You're don't have to take care of him. You don't have to take care of him. That's
He should be
She
like,
getting CPR training or
right,
something.
right.
She
and
ain't
then
gonna
don't
use
mess
it.
around and say he got a military pension.
ain't
Oh,
gonna use You know who tickles me? Sister Sharon, she work out at the VA.
Right.
Oh, I know all of them that got them good pensions out there that coming through here. I didn't know he get a pension. Yeah, he got a pension.
You don't think they pushing up on her? You know they pushing up on her. You know I got a check.
Yeah, she said, ooh,
Love that man.
who so
Had that check.
Yeah, I seen him the other. He come out the VA. He get a good pension. Yeah, he 100%.
I got to go, but I got to tell the story real quick. I had a coworker. Her husband would receive Social Security, right, as a pension. She treat that dude like dirt until the first of the month. He a king after that. He eat steak. He eat lobster.
well, as I walk out the door,
That was before direct deposit.
we were in, me and Donna Shepherd were in Jake's, and Donna, she the big light skinned plump sister at that time
Light skin.
that all the old men love.
Light bright.
Yeah, love all old men love light skinned women.
And she was a little thick then
They're
too.
thick,
And they
yeah.
like thickness
Yeah.
too.
And so me and Donna sitting at the table, and this old dude walk up to the table. I mean, good and old, got the overalls on, pressed and starched the whole 9 yards. And he leaned in, he nodded to me. Hey, how you doing? He leaned in to Donna. He said, I got a check that hit the mailbox the first day every month,
That's his opening line.
and you can have it.
What you gonna do?
And you can have it. Dude, when I tell you, I melted into the corner. I was laughing so hard. And Donna, because he was serious. And Donna was like, well, that is nice. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate the information. I was under the table.
Donald slipped him the number. You didn't see it.
I know, right? Yeah, baby, we'll call that.
But I just said, who still got checks that hit the mailbox? He said, my check hit the mailbox.
Nobody. Everybody direct deposit now.
Y'all have a good day.
WNOV is direct deposit. Everybody direct deposit. You're listening to WNOV Community Voice. Michelle, thank you, dear. We're going to take a quick break. Oh, yeah, let me do this. When we get back, we'll be joined by Congressman Gabe Amo of the great state of Rhode Island. He is the first congressional district representative. He'll be here talking in support of the Harris Walls campaign. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
My right to vote.
My right to choose.
The freedom that so many of our ancestors fought and died for.
Back to Community Voice, and we have on the line with us Congressman Gabe Amo. Did I pronounce it as Amo? Amo.
Mo, you got it right, sir.
I got it all. I got it right.
Yes, sir.
When I saw the name, I said, "Oh man, he got to be Ghanaian." So your folks are from Ghanaian and Liberia.
Yeah, my dad was born in Ghana, my mom in Liberia, and they met in Rhode Island, where I now have the honor and privilege of serving the 1st Congressional District.
And that was in your past life. Prior to this, you had worked in the Biden administration, and you pulled off a major upset when you were able to win the 1st congressional seat there in Rhode Island.
Yeah, I basically put forward a theory that, the things that we all share, and I truly believe that we have more in common than not, that foundation of hard work, grit, resilience, and determination from somebody who came before us to make our tomorrow better than today would be part of my message, along with my experience working for 2 presidents of the United States and the governor. And that's why I'm out here working so hard for Vice President Harris, because I've seen her work firsthand.
We, just anybody who is probably breathing and living in America know we're in the midst of a very competitive election. And as we get down and we kind of drill into it, we do know that, I won't say there's an issue, but there are some concerns as it relates to how African-American men are responding in this election. Talk about the importance of this election, and then let's talk about how Black men can be either negatively impacted or positively impacted, depending on who's elected president.
Well, thank you so much for that question. As the great Congressman Jim Clyburn often says, this is the most consequential election in our lifetime, because there's a fundamental difference in experience for the American people, but specifically for Black Americans and Black men, depending on this outcome. And that's why we need to elevate Black men. We're not talking down to Black men. They and we, as Black men, are partners in ensuring that our communities have the economic freedom they deserve, that they have the rights that we have earned are protected, and that we do everything we can to make sure that we're able to thrive. And that's why I was very grateful to hear the Vice President put forward her opportunity agenda for Black men, focusing on a group of our population that requires a real focus. And so, she rolled out a plan talking about making sure that 1 million small business loans that are forgivable at $20,000 a pop go to Black entrepreneurs, right? Because we often don't get the capital needed to pursue our dreams, our ideas. When we talk about job training, education, mentorship programs, investing in Black male health. In my family, we have sickle cell. We have bouts of prostate cancer. We need dedicated federal resources through a health equity initiative that's focused on them. And then, of course, I think it's so important that we look at cryptocurrency as a wealth building opportunity, making sure that we regulate it properly so that no one loses money. And finally, I think it's so important that no one is going to prison for marijuana, right? Legalizing recreational marijuana is long overdue, and we need to make sure that there are opportunities for Black Americans who have been disproportionately harmed through the criminal justice system related to marijuana, make sure that there are economic opportunities in there. Now, that's a contrast to Trump, because, the 45th president, Donald Trump, wants to talk about rolling things back. Remember, he bought a whole newspaper ad calling for the execution of the Central Park Five. He's the one who started the birtherism on Obama. He has no interest in helping anybody besides himself and his legal proceedings. That's what he's focused on, rather than being focused on the American people.
We were, as I spoke with your colleague yesterday, Congressman Gregory Meeks, and we were talking about, and specifically, and even before we were on the air, we were talking about this issue in Wisconsin. You mentioned people going to prison because of marijuana, and I think part of it is the Well, one, I think it's just been changed. It's no longer considered a Schedule I drug, correct?
Yeah, there's an active process of rescheduling. I don't think it's been complete, but that's in progress because President Biden initiated it.
But it just, for us, it's been a gateway to prison, where you think about something. I'm not going to say it's innocuous, but something like marijuana, and who usually gets caught up in this because of how enforcement is done is usually Black males. So I think that this is an important step towards at least closing one of the pipelines to prison.
Without a doubt. And this is about rectifying things from the past, but it's also about economic opportunity for the future, right? We have to be future oriented. This is why the vice president putting forward an agenda for Black men, an opportunity agenda for Black men is so important, because we can't merely talk about the past. Elections are about the future. It's about where we're going. And economic freedom is how we make sure that we have a future where we're prosperous, where Black men continue to do what we've done for a long time, which is persevere, demonstrate a great amount of resilience, and be the bedrock of our communities across the country.
Well, those particularly Black men who said that they might be supportive of former President Trump, or people saying they're undecided. How much of that do you think, and I think this is even with white males, how much do you think where men are not, some men anyway, are not feeling that they're being seen or heard?
Well, look, I think it's important that we are linked in arms on some of the challenges that we face. So when we talk about reproductive freedom, for the women in our communities, that's about autonomy for our bodies, right? And we know that is a very particular pain point for the Black community. And so, when we look at it, all of our policies should be inclusive for men, for women, for white Americans, Black Americans, Latino Americans. But it is also true that some folks are disproportionately harmed by policies, and when we look at the benefits and investment in Black folks, we see that that rising tide lifts all boats. So when Black America does well, America does well generally. When men do well, women do well, and vice versa. So we have to be inclusive with our thinking, but that doesn't mean we can't be intentional about our policies.
When I was speaking with Congressman Meeks yesterday, we were talking about how a vote in Rhode Island for a Black man is probably very different in this election cycle than a Black man voting in Wisconsin or in Michigan or in Pennsylvania or even Georgia, because of the Electoral College. So how do we, get people to understand just the importance of what's happening here? We said every election cycle, this is the most existential election we've known, right? Until the next one. But I'm feeling this one, like seems to me to be rather existential.
Well, it is existential because when you look at Donald Trump, he is putting forward a message that's, one, selfish. It's about him, but it's about government operating and exercising control in our lives, over women's bodies, over the ways that we educate our children in this country, just dismantling the Department of Education, the way that the Department of Justice would be run as a police force for Trump. That Project 2025 stuff is real. And we should be deathly concerned about giving power again to Donald Trump, who certainly talks about being a dictator for a day. He talks about, in an unhinged way, about having the type of control that Americans don't want in a democracy, right? And so when we look at the Electoral College and its impact, I'm in Rhode Island. Our electoral votes will likely go to the Democrat. I can't say for certain because the election hasn't happened. But what Wisconsinites, what folks across your great state will have the opportunity to do starting October 22nd is to be that voice to ensure that it's not just the blue states, but it's the purple states. It's the states in the Midwest and the South that have that swinging tendency that they can be solid blue for Kamala Harris. That's why I travel the country and talk to people in North Carolina. I was in Philly this past weekend, have been to Atlanta, because I say to voters in those places, I need you. I need you so that we can fully have a secure set of freedoms, a secure set of opportunities, and a future where we all have the opportunity to thrive, and really putting forward a new way forward, and not the backwards looking views of Donald Trump.
Well, we're gonna, as we wrap this up, can you tell me why this race is so close when the contrast is so stark and evident?
Well, look, this race was always going to be close. It was always going to be close, and our country, for better or worse, is divided, but divided not on our values, not on our aspirations, but we are divided because of the political moment that we're in. But by and large, when people hear Kamala Harris's vision, when they hear from the vice president, they connect to a new way forward. They see the clear contrast between somebody who is invested in growing the middle class, someone who wants the economy to grow for everybody, who is going to unite us, literally using language of unity, versus someone who only wants to divide us in Donald Trump. And so while this election might be close, I think the American people always rise to the occasion, and certainly will take an opportunity here to look at their choices. And they need to look at who is invested in their lives, in their economic success, in their future. And there's only one choice there. It is Kamala Harris. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And when I say to folks in states like Wisconsin, I am so linked in wanting the future that we deserve. And I need you to come out and vote in droves, and not just come out, but bring 5 people, because we need to show overwhelmingly that we have a positive vision for the future under Kamala Harris.
Congressman Gabe Amo of the great state of Rhode Island. I cannot think of the great state of Rhode Island and not think about Quahog. Of course, Brown University, and our rivals, Providence College, is in Rhode Island, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, they're our what are we?
DC and Marquette.
Oh yeah, that's right. Appreciate you, man, and hopefully, if you get this way, we'll get a chance to meet you.
Would love to do that. Take care, everybody.
All right, take care. You're listening to Community Voice. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Hardworking family businesses
Harris Wall's campaign, particularly talking about initiatives that she has put forward that she'd like to see as it impacts on Black men. I did get a chance yesterday to hear the interview that Vice President Harris did with Charlemagne the God yesterday. I have some takeaways. One of the things that is and was really made apparent in that interview is just how sharp Vice President Kamala Harris is. She is, I know people, oh, she's scripted. No. She's good. She's very good. And to sit there and listen to her, not see her, because I watched it on CNN and they didn't have the video feed. They just had the audio feed. And just listening to how she would respond to the questions, I'd always been impressed with her, but I was very impressed yesterday. But the issue, and Congressman Amo was here, and let me do a cleanup here. I said in the beginning of the interview, Ghanaian, and it should have been from Ghana, not from Ghanaian. There's no country called Ghanaian. It is Ghana. It is where the gate of no return is, and what that is there, right there on the ocean. It was that final gate that Africans who would be enslaved would go through. And I know when people visit Ghana, that is a must-see in terms of our history. And the reason why I kind of was able to connect him to Ghana was his middle name is Kofi, which is a very common name there in Western Africa, particularly in Ghana. So, and I didn't get a chance to ask him because his folks are obviously they're immigrants, mom being from Liberia, dad being from Ghana. How does he feel? And they're here legally. How does he feel when he hears these attacks basically on all immigrants? Oh, no, not all immigrants, immigrants of color, and how he feel. But one of the takeaways I got, and let me shout out Charlemagne the God. He pointed out, he said, you know what? And I kind of backed up on it, and you begin to hear a little bit of pushback. The fact that Black men express that they might not feel seen or heard is real. And when we are seen and heard, in many instances, is in a very negative light. And so you can feel forgotten. But he pointed something out. President Obama gave a speech where he was really castigating, particularly Black men, those Black men who might be ambivalent or outright hostile towards Kamala Harris. And he waved his finger basically saying, hey, man, you need to get your mind right. Well, Charlemagne the God pointed something out that I had been feeling and thinking. So if we're wagging our fingers at Black men, why aren't he asked the question, he says, then shouldn't Hillary Clinton be waving her finger at white women who have been voting for Republicans and Republican candidates? And then he said, should Joe Biden be wiggling his finger at white males? The point is that it and that kind of gets into the conversation Congressman Amo and I was having. Brothers, if you're listening, and this really hit me. If you live in the state of Wisconsin and you are an eligible voter and you are a Black man, you have a powerful vote. Your vote, and I know we always say every vote counts the same. No, they don't. Because of how America's electoral, I can never say it right, the way that our elections are set up for president is the Electoral College that decides who the president will be. So if you live in a state like New York, where, I think Harris is up by 26 points. If you're a Black man voting for Trump, you can vote, but it's not going to do a dent because New York is probably going to go blue. as the congressman said, Rhode Island is probably going to go blue. So if you're a black man living in Rhode Island, a black man living in California, even a black man, I was kidding my buddy down in Florida, your vote is very different than a black man living in Georgia, a black man living in Wisconsin, a black man living in Michigan, a black man living in Pennsylvania, a black man living in Nevada. Your vote is more powerful than a black man living in California at this point, because California is going to go blue. Wisconsin is purple. My mom was asking me about this last night, and I said, you know, Wisconsin's a purple state, so turnout becomes real important. So is the black male vote important? In a marginal election, it's important. But depending on where you live, it has even more currency and even more importance. So in Milwaukee, as a black man, you're in a powerful position if you decide to go vote. Okay. So when he pointed that out, but he's right. We're blaming black men. Look, black people only make up 13% of the population. And maybe margins, again, we're depending on the state that you're in, that really matters. But this is a majority European country. White people still decide who will be president. So then the question is, and I know this question George be asking, is, so what's wrong with all those folks who will just blindly follow Donald Trump? Because and I don't know if anybody saw him when he threw the rally dance party. He was in Pennsylvania, I think, and they had two medical emergencies there, and someone said that's typical for a Trump rally. People get sick, they're older, they get sick, and so he had two. So after the second medical emergency, they just played music for 40 minutes. He never spoke, just played music, expected people to dance, the whole piece. And they pointed out that he has pulled out of two interviews. He just pulled out of an interview that he was scheduled to have with CNBC. And so, again, I told you Wednesday's word was acuity. Everyone was talking about where Joe Biden is. If you're a Trump supporter, you really should be concerned about where Donald Trump is in terms of his mental acuity. He babbles. He doesn't stay on message, which he never did. But I was watching the interview that he did yesterday with the Chicago Economic Club. And, you know, and they're throwing him softballs and trying to say to him that tariffs are not good. But he's made up in his mind that tariffs are good. Tariffs are good, even though tariffs is another tax, because when he did the tariffs on China during his administration, he had to go to Congress to ask basically for a bailout for all of because what China did was, okay, we just won't buy soybeans, or we'll put a tariff on soybeans. That began to hurt farmers. This whole idea that China, what major car does China even make that they sell in America? We don't buy Chinese cars. What? Now, you can say Germany, yeah, Japan, Korea, South Korea, but no, not China. There's no China. There's no General Motors of China. So the fact that this guy can be so misinformed, so ignorant, not being able to really understand, it was something that Vice President Harris said in the interview. And she said it to me when I had a chance to have a conversation with her. So yeah, do you want to get into a macroeconomic conversation? Because that most people, they didn't shut down. People are more on a micro economic thing. What's my rent looking like? How much am I paying for food? What am I paying for gas? Okay, that's micro, because that hits us right where we are, right where we live. So it was, if you get a chance, I think YouTube would probably have a great interview. He didn't pull any punches. As well he shouldn't. And I think based on what happened earlier, and one of our colleagues here in the city got kind of caught up into a little mini scandal when it came to the White House sending out questions that they would like to see asked the president Joe Biden at that time. And there was a sister in Philly. She lost her job. And then again, one of our colleagues here, because even I get when candidates come on, full transparency, we get the talking points, right? But we have a journalistic responsibility to ask the questions over and beyond the talking points, because that's what they're coming on. They're coming on to make their argument. If I was talking to someone from the Trump camp, they're coming on to do what they're supposed to do. You do your talking points. Here's the things that we want to see emphasized. And then we have a responsibility, especially when it's wrong or inaccurate, to say we need to correct the record. You saw in the vice presidential debate where J.D. Vance got frustrated early on. So I didn't know we were going to be fact checking real time, because you just figure you get on and do what you and your boss does. Just start throwing out lies, and most people are going to believe it is to be true. The damage that some of the lies, misinformation that's being spread. For example, in North Carolina got hit hard, by Helene, and they were threatening FEMA workers because people were saying that they're diverting FEMA money to immigrants, which is not true. That's not what happened. That's not what's happening, right? And so enough people hear that, and then it gets out on the internet, right? Once it's on Facebook and once it's on Twitter, X, people are going to take it and run for it to be true. And there's a great danger in that. So it's hampering the type of aid that needs to get there in terms of helping the folks. You might have a problem with government until you need government. So for all my folks, we want smaller government until we have a major disaster in your congressional district. And now you expect big government to come in and do what big government does, help you when you're in dire situations. So, and I know Keon used to get on me, call me a G-man. You're a government guy. Yeah, I'm a government guy, because I understand based on my life experience, and then based on people who will tell you. I was just talking to a friend of mine. They benefited from the Biden loan forgiveness, right? He said they just got the letter. So things happen on a micro level. Let me say something else too, as I was thinking about this, because as I was thinking about President Barack Obama, can anybody tell me what primarily black male initiative that Barack Obama put out? Now, Barack Obama didn't have the same problems Kamala Harris is having in terms of support, but he didn't do anything. As a matter of fact, it could be argued that former President Obama a lot of times ran away from the race issue, right? He didn't want that to be an issue. But in this particular time around, and I was talking to someone and they asked me, what do I think it is? Well, I think that there is, look, real talk, there is, don't tell me, I have my brother's keeper, but I don't know if he ran on that. Someone's texting me right now. So kind of where we are, but I think we have to acknowledge this, that especially for men, black men, Latino men, white men, we deal with a certain level. I know she was going to say my brother's keeper, but I think he did that into the administration. Someone pointed out my brother's keeper, a group I actually worked with. But no, I think it's, yeah, we look, there have been issues between male and female since they've been male and female. And sometimes that can get in the way. There are men who will never see themselves voting for a woman. There are women who can't see themselves voting for a woman in leadership. And I don't know what the significant part of it. Okay. Someone just checks me. He said parity in sentencing for crack and powder cocaine. That was an initiative, but I don't know if he ran on that. But okay. All right. The point I'm making is that, and then again, because it was Barack Obama, and this is not a negative or a positive. This is just a is. I don't think we had that. But let me say this, because this is real talk. There were, and particularly black men, who asked, what has Barack Obama done for me? I heard that. We had those discussions, where there were people. So we want people to do what we think is right or the right thing to do. And then we find out, though, but as human beings, and human beings are going to bring their stuff into the situation. There's a certain level of projection that we do. Do we kind of see ourselves in that person? For some people, that's important. And as Vice President Harris pointed out yesterday, there is, like she said, there is, and then somebody just texted me, what did brothers ask him to do? Well, come on, man. We didn't have to be Pacific. I'm just saying that it is different. And that difference, depending on where you're sitting, might be nothing. Might be going on. Hey, Carby, do me a favor, man. Green button for me. Good morning.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, my brother. How are you this morning?
I am well, by God. Grace, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. We have on the line with Student Minister William Muhammad of the Nation of Islam. Mosque number 3, right?
Yes, sir. That's right.
And thank you, man, I was going to do something, and I just got so caught up. So I need to reach out to Student Minister Muhammad, and then you reached out to me. So I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for that.
I appreciate you as well, brother.
Appreciate that. So today is the 29th anniversary of the Million Man March. And so I wanted to, as we just have this discussion, I was just writing down some of the things that were happening in 1995 or prior to. We had just come off of the Rodney King verdict, I think in 92. There were other things going on. But what we didn't know, or maybe we did or we didn't know, that when we're at the Million Man March at the same time, Congress is working on one of the most egregious crime bills ever. So I'm asking, based on what the situation was then, what precipitated Minister Farrakhan to make this call that we would go to Washington, D.C.?
And that's an excellent question, brother, because that question and the answer to it kind of goes right to the motive of it. And when you understand the motive of something, you understand the level of magnitude and success of it, right? So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was guided by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to the reality that President Reagan at that time had planned a war, and he evolved in his understanding of that communication, and he saw that it was against Libya. But as it evolved and unfolded even more than that, he saw Libya as just a sign, and he saw the United States government of America setting up the destruction and the moving on Black youth and gang under the guise of a war against drugs and gangs. And at that time, if you remember that time, because you brought that up, movies like Menace to Society and Boys in the Hood and all of these movies that were giving the world images of Black males as maniacal, as savage, as beasts. At that time, the Prime Minister of Japan made a public statement to the world that maybe a nation should not even invest in the United States until they get rid of their Negro problem. So the Black male, Minister Farrakhan saw the Black male being set up. And of course, our own actions were feeding right into this plan of the annihilation of our Black youth. So he began to, as a result, crisscross the country, going from city to city. Milwaukee was certainly one of them, on a Stop the Killing tour.
Mhm.
And it was geared toward the black man in particular, but our people, but also toward the government of the United States of America, who's also involved in, the killing of people and nations throughout America and throughout the world, right? And so, but it was a stop the killing tour for the purpose of a warning and exhortation to the black community. And then after that, in October, in 1994, 1995, early 1995, he began to go across the nation again from city to city, just speaking to black men and warning black men, teaching black men. And at that first one in New York, and he didn't plan on saying anything about a Million Man March because it wasn't really a plan of his. His aim was just to warn. But God put it in his heart, put it in his mouth. And he said, in New York at the Jacob Javits Center, we're going to bring 1 million men to Washington, D.C. And we heard the minister say that as it came out his mouth and he saw the words, he wanted to just bring them back, but it's too late, right? And so now we just have to go after it. And as he went from city to city, and of course we began to organize and plan. And right here in this city, we had many organizational meetings and rallies and galvanizing different communities. And of course, WNOV was so integral and so important in the planning. At that time, it was Commander McGee, and then of course we had 1290. So both stations were really very helpful. But NOV was really pushing the Million Man March. And of course, we thank Allah for WNOV and Mr. Jones and the investment that they made. And we work with pastors, the Christian community and whatnot. And thousands of black men went to Washington, D.C. from our city and from our state. And we thank God for Representative Polly Williams at that time and many other sisters who helped organize and cajoled and push their men to go to Washington, D.C. And then the real motive, right? I know you mentioned the political aspects. And of course, Reverend Jackson brought up that at the march as a warning and as an exhortation. But the real motive of the march, from the minister's perspective and what God put in his heart, was that we as black men who have been collectively the destructive forces in our community, that we may atone, that we may go to Washington, D.C., not for political purposes, but to go before the world and to first talk to God, atone before him, and ask him for forgiveness for our negligence as fathers, as uncles, as husbands, what are destructive forces that we have been in our communities, and ask him for forgiveness, and then make a pledge that we will come back and that we would be constructive, and that which we had torn down, we would build up. And so it was a spiritual call. It was a call where it went beyond the intellect and the politics of it, but to the soul and hearts of the many men that went to Washington, D.C. So, the Nation of Islam is in the thousands, but on that mall was millions, 1.6, 1.7, nearly 2 million men. And so this wasn't a Nation of Islam call. It went beyond just the nation. And so we had, the educated, the uneducated, the political, the non-political. We had Bloods, Crips, Gangster Disciples, Vice Lords, entertainers, athletes. The whole segment and gamut of our community was on that mall. And the spirit of it was so great and so powerful that it resonated throughout the country. It resonated throughout the world. And it was a day that really deserves an annual commemoration and a remembrance. And it's 29 years ago. So we have a whole generation, young people who don't know nothing about the Million Man March.
Right.
And we can't depend upon the educational public school system or whatnot to teach on that, because this was not a march that was approved of by this country, by this government, by the establishment. As a matter of fact, there was so much done to try to stop people from going to the march in the way of negative coverage and scare tactics and calling Minister Farrakhan anti-Semitic and a hate teacher and whatnot. But on that day, President Clinton, he left and did a speech in Texas, and the Congress shut down. Underneath our feet, on the mall, was an army waiting for Black men to come and act up so that they can come and move on us. But it was a day of harmony and peace, and it really was a slice of heaven. And anyone who was present at that march, the spirit is really undescribable.
Yeah, I know. I'm part of a organization that let their opposition know, the National Baptist Convention. None that I'm aware of, none of the major Black Christian denominations came out and supported it, even though many of its members. And I can remember in the airport seeing Pastor Cedric Daniels, right, who had a relationship with the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, but to see there were people there from all walks of life, and to be able to feel it, even when we were on the metro, because we flew in on the metro going to the mall, and you would see people cheering, or to see guys there with their sons, and then when we walked from the Forestall, I think that's Forestall, and we walked onto the mall, we didn't hear anything, and then we looked, and it was like, there's 1 million people out here. I had never seen so many people in one place. I mean, literally. And I know the National Park Services no longer counts crowds because of the controversy, because of the Million Man March. But there was a guy out who does this like a mathematician. So he says, so look, from the Capitol to the Washington Monument is 1.5 miles, right? And from the Washington Monument to the Lincoln Memorial, 1.5 miles. It's 3 miles on the mall. We had people all the way to the Washington Monument. And as you pointed out, we're not even talking about the people that was on the side streets, right?
Right.
It was, and so I know we go back and forth, and but I counted 1 million people. That was my count. But no, I mean, it was just incredible. But you talk about that spirit that was there. In the Christian tradition, we talk about the formation of the Christian church happened on the day of Pentecost, where you had all these different people who were all one people, but who would come from different cultural and geographic areas, right?
Yeah.
And they came together, and in that moment, differences disappeared and people became one. And that was my experience at the Million Man March.
Yeah, that was my experience, and that was so many other experience. I mean, it was so tight up in there that if a brother needed to go to the bathroom, he had to be lifted up and just passed along to the end of the line so that he could go.
Right.
But,
and look at the creator, because that was a perfect day. It was like 72 degrees. It was a perfect day. I mean, weather-wise, hadn't seen a day like, we didn't see a day like that again until 2008, November 5th, whatever, Barack Obama, that election. That was a perfect day, but it lined up. And I walked away from this saying that the creator could use whomever the creator wants to put forth the message. And in this situation, this movement towards justice, and particularly justice for descendants of enslaved African males in this country?
Yeah. Well, again, this commemoration of atonement, it resonates so well because it is just as relevant, probably more relevant today as it was 29 years ago. Because atonement is a concept in which once we understand that we are wrong about something and we've harmed somebody, that we acknowledge it, that we confess it, that we repent of it, and that we make an atonement, that we ask forgiveness, and that we reconcile with one another. So this is something that gives us power in our community. It's something that we need to have in our relationships with our family. It's something that we need to have in our relationships in the community as we interact with one another in the community for a cause that is bigger than ourselves. We need to, we offend one another. We have resentments in the community, and these resentments and the lack of atonement and proper communication cause us to be disrespectful to one another. And when we're not organized properly and not as one, then our work is minimized. It is mitigated by our divisions. And
let's ask. And what has, if anything, has changed since October 16th, 1995, and where we are today, October 16th, 2024? Has there been changes, negatively, positively, in terms of when we came together on the mall and where we find ourselves today, particularly Black men in America today?
Well, there was immediate change, and there was a lot of positive responses and effects from the march. For example, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan asked those men on the mall to go back home and find a spiritual house, a church, a mosque, or synagogue, and join it. He asked them to go back and join the NAACP, the Urban League, or any organization that you feel is a benefit for our people. He asked that there are 25,000 Black children that need to be adopted. He asked that we take in those children, that we adopt those children. He asked that we go and register to vote. And all of these were answered, right? The mayors and police chiefs throughout the city of America were all taking credit for the low crime rate that was subsequently in 1996 and 1997, as if they had done something different. But it really was the effect of the Million Man March. Now, I think that one of the things that we really have to understand is that anytime that we get a victory, anytime that we make some kind of progress, anytime that there is some level of peace and unity among Black people in this country, our enemy who is looking at it, our enemy who is measuring it, our enemies who we don't see, they are always going to work to make sure that unity, that progress does not stand. So when you look around today, we have a lot of problems that are a result of social engineering and a lack of our ability to take control of our own destiny and to maintain the spirit of atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility. So it's atonement, reconciling with self, reconciling with family, and then taking responsibility to control our own destiny and not depend upon others outside of our community.
I was telling them that earlier before you had come on, that how my mom and my wife and my nephew, they took me to the airport. But one of the things I had started watching on C-SPAN, I think early in the morning, I'm an early riser, so I was watching on C-SPAN. By the time we had gotten back to the airport, every major news outlet had cut in to cover the Million Man March. I don't know if that was the original plan, but it became newsworthy just for the reason that you had pointed out earlier, that you had 1 million black men, right, in one space, and there was no drama. And for some folks, and look, and it wasn't on my mind that there would be any drama. I mean, there wasn't that kind of set, right?
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't like I was going to NWA concert. I know something could break out there, but it never had that, and the honorable minister said no drugs, no alcohol, and there was no drugs and no alcohol. It wasn't that kind of set, but you said something about the enemy outside of us, but there's an enemy within us too.
That's correct.
In terms of how we have internalized the racism to the point where we sometimes we're our worst enemies, right? Because just how this has been so embedded in us that, oh man, you're not going to do anything. You don't have any worth. But I think that was emblematic of something there. I mean, a million people, it doesn't really matter. You get 1 million people someplace, that's really significant. And I'm sorry.
The point that you're making is really important, and that is why the concept of atonement is so necessary, because we do have these impediments. We have been consumed by the Western world, which is it promotes sin and debauchery and everything that God condemns, this world promotes, right? So we are full. The Bible says we're like this: we're born in sin and shaped in iniquity, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot for all of us to atone for. And so this is an annual commemoration. It's a day of service. If you remember during that time, Minister Farrakhan asked those of us who couldn't go to the march, right, to stay home from work, stay home from school, mm-hmm. to make that sacrifice, right? And we, to the members of the Nation of Islam, we were asked to fast in preparation for 5 days, that we make an atonement. Minister said you can't call your people to atone until you atone, mm-hmm. right? So we fasted and we prepared, and it's a spiritual day. It's a day that is a holy day, not like a holiday. And it's a day that we ask God for forgiveness, that we may be free from the burden and the consequences of our own sin. And if we can do that kind of thing collectively and settle our differences, then we can be more effective in solving the many problems that we have in our community.
I also think that, you mentioned atonement and reconciliation, but repentance is also, I think, part of the process. And we're constantly in repentance is to turn away from those things that certainly are negative, that are sinful. And so repentance becomes one of those things. And so we say, examine yourself. And we all will fall short of the mark, but that doesn't mean that we don't move towards the mark, right? I mean, it and how worthwhile it is. And we talk a lot, to use this word like pride, but there was an enormous amount of pride because brothers looking at each other going like, look at what we just done. I don't even know if that sentence structure is right, but that's what it felt like. And it was interesting. You say people stay home from work. My wife ended up staying home from work, right? And people started. It was the movement of God. Sometimes is confounding to human beings, right? That and how we can find ourselves in a move of God. And I really do believe this in my little Baptist soul that was a move of God. And God is non-sectarian, so it didn't matter who made. Well, it did matter who made the call, because I don't think anybody else could have made the call, and it resonated the way it did when Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan made the call, right? And we might have some differences with him, but that all went out the window. It didn't. It. I heard the call back, and I think back in March of that year, and I was going like, I gotta go. I got to go. In spite of what my national leadership was saying, I said I had to go. Well, brother, I appreciate you, man.
Well, I thank you, brother, for allowing us to have a few words and just to commemorate a little bit, and for all of those who went. We thank Allah for you, and we pray that God will continue and keep the spirit of the Million Man March alive. And I encourage all of us to participate in the concept and the process of atonement with self, with God, with our family, with communities, with one another. And today we're going to be going out as a day of service. We're going to be feeding, the hungry out in the community, and then we'll be at the mosque this evening at 7:30 for a message entitled "Atonement." Long live the spirit of the Million Man March. So thank you so much, Brother T, for allowing me these few moments, and may God continue to bless you and your radio listening audience.
And thank you, man. And thank you for being part of Faith, Justice, Politics. That was an incredible conversation, man.
Yeah, you had a lot of incredible conversation, and I thank you for bringing that up, because we talk politics a lot, but we don't include the one who was the reality, the creator, right. The one who was over all of the politics and the things that are taking place. So that's a very pregnant and important conversation. So I thank you for that vision.
I appreciate you, man. Student Minister William Muhammad Marks, number 3 of the Nation of Islam. As again, we commemorate the 29th anniversary of the Million Man March. Peace, my good brother.
Assalamu alaikum.
All right. Alaikum salam. Caller, welcome to the program.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, man. How you?
This is Rick calling you long distance from Germany.
What up, Rick?
First of all, I'd like to say I appreciate you giving some time to the brother minister. And second, I was there at the Million Man March. I wore a Tweety Bird yellow sweatsuit in commemoration of the Jewish folk that were holding me up and giving me life at that time in the form of an apartment in Washington, D.C. But I went to the march, and I have fond memories. I wanted to ask the brother, before you let him go, what is on the menu during this election and after this election? The Million Man March was the past, and so many brothers say, they wave their hand and say, that was just a show. I was there. I don't think it was a show. I think many of the brothers who came were sincere and are probably doing what they can to change the streets today. But you let the brother go, so he can't answer my question.
But you were there, and let me say, it was probably a brother who wasn't there who called it a show, right? So, and can I put it out there? There's a certain amount of hating that happened. I remember coming back, and the sister said, "What y'all gonna do?" Like, damn, we talking about 400 years. I don't know if anything gonna change in 24 hours. But I think the things that the student minister pointed out, and when he and I were having the conversation on Faith, Justice, Politics, we talked about that there had been a movement where the Nation of Islam was not involved. Its members were not as involved in the whole, what we call electoral political thing. But I do remember leaving there where he was encouraging Black men to go home if they haven't and register to vote. That was kind of the things that you began to see. And as I pointed out to student minister, unbeknownst to us, Congress is putting together one of the most onerous crime bills ever, right? Now, I don't know if it was in response to the Million Man March. I do know that it came out about the same time as the Million Man March. And he was right. Bill Clinton left town. They closed down DC. Like we go now. First of all, this is crazy. No, I can't say people would get on a plane and fly someplace and riot. That's not true because that happened on January the 6th, right? So, but I'm saying, but that wasn't anybody's intention when they got there, man. And I was thinking he was talking about some of the things that happened. Well, a lot of people don't know in 1992, Crips and Bloods had a truce, right? And a lot of that was engineered by the Honorable Louis Farrakhan and Mr. Jim Brown. They sat down and they're letting it go. So he was right when you had gangster disciples and vice lords and Crips and Bloods, because some things are bigger than those little parochial things we deal with in our neighborhood, which is ultimate justice and full humanity, particularly for Black men, not just in America, but in the world.
Well, let me say in response, I believe that the Constitution was suspended the year before the Million Man March and just after the first World Trade Center bombing. Mm-hmm. And I believe they extended that suspension after 9/11, and we are still operating as a government in crisis because of the backlash from the Islamic wars that America has been engaged in, and because of the domestic terror of white supremacists at home. They knew they were going to be caught in between two powerful entities in terms of Islamic terrorism, not Islamic peoples, but Islamic terrorism and domestic terrorism from white people at home. And I believe they suspended the Constitution. I can't prove that, but I believe that. And I think global warming is a lot more than just a little bit of ice melting. I think it is apocalypse, and I believe that. We need to prepare our hearts and minds for what is coming upon this world. I'm done, brother man.
All right, man. Appreciate you. I'm trying to think. There was a lot going on then because, because I think either 94, 95, it was also, because he was talking about terrorism, there was also the bombing of the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. Waco had happened in 93. And Timothy McVeigh said that part of his motivation for the bombing was what had happened at Waco. So there was a lot going on in America. And then, which is really fascinating, at the same time, we were dealing with an economic boom in this country. I mean, it was, we were humming under Clinton economically. But he, again, the crime bill, when he left office, and Bush tricked it off in the first year, massive tax cuts. That was the other thing that came up. I was talking just that this whole thing, and I talk to people from time to time, and I know I mentioned this to Senator Tammy Baldwin and others, that how, and Michelle pointed it out on her program today, Barack Obama, in a lot of ways, a lot of his policies, certainly coming off of 2008, really saved our economy. And when Donald Trump assumed the presidency, he had gotten a good economy. He didn't have to straighten anything out. So what does he do? The first thing Republicans do after Democrats have gone in and fixed the economy, they do massive tax cuts, right? And who benefited from the tax cuts? And then when people were saying how you can use government agencies to go after your enemies, part of that tax bill impacted, I'm talking about the Trump tax cut, impacted states like California, states like New York, which were blue, but they could no longer itemize, right? You had to be at a certain level to be able to itemize. So the average person, they give you what, 20,000, 22,000, whatever it is in terms of a standard deduction. And then you have to figure out anything over that. So you weren't allowed to deduct, because you used to be able to allow, you could deduct your state taxes, and I know your taxes that was related to your home, all that got wiped out under the tax bill. So when you hear Republicans talk about tax cuts, that's not talking about for middle class people. That's not talking about for poor people. That's talking about for the ultra super rich folks, right? That's who it's directed at. And the policies, look, the same people who are pushing back on sending out stimulus checks, sending out stimulus checks to American citizens. I just saw a campaign ad they're running against Tammy Baldwin. In it, they said that, and she made sure that stimulus checks got the people in prison. Every American got a stimulus check, regardless of whether you were in prison or not. Now, for those dudes who did get the checks in prison, it went to restitution, went to some other things, but every American citizen got a stimulus check. That was just one of those things. And why? And that's why we again, you want to have a macroeconomics conversation. But one of the things that drove inflation, and inflation is, and I read the definition on the air, is when there's too much money in the economy, the value of money drops. So in order to increase the value of money, right, then you need to put some things into place. And what the Federal Reserve decided to do was to raise the interest rates. What does that mean? That then people's access to money is dissipated, okay? Because chances are, depending on where you are, you can't afford the interest rate. And so what you do is you basically bringing it down. You want inflation to come down. And other things were happening. Wages were going up, right? Because of COVID, the demand for labor increase. If there's an increase in demand for labor, that means that compensation and benefits for those folks, becomes an employee market. Okay. An employee market means that you're out trying to compete to get folks to come and work for you. But then there was money in the economy because of the stimulus checks. And so it took all of that. So that adjustment had to be made. And they're not giving the Biden administration credit, because all we were hearing was for the last 2 years whether or not there was going to be a recession. There has not been a recession. As a matter of fact, they're calling it a soft landing in terms of the economy. So you notice now that there's a shifting in prices are too high in terms of Republican attack ads. And so what Republicans have done is you can't argue about the economy anymore because the economy is doing better. Okay, so what do you argue about? Well, let's go to the old tried and true playbook. Let's go after trans people and let's go after immigrants. Okay, and that resonates with people because, as I was saying with Student Minister, we've internalized racism, but white folks have internalized racism too, and misogynism and homophobia. And this is across the board. That's the real discussion that they're having in certain black circles. There are conservative black ministers who are supporting Donald Trump, and they're doing it based on his appointment of 3 Supreme Court justices who were very instrumental in overturning Roe v. Wade, right? And then for us to kind of sit up and go like, well, I ain't anyway, don't get me started on that one. But anyway, so that's what you're hearing. And those attack ads are effective. Tammy Baldwin was up 8 points in August. Tammy Baldwin is only up by 2 points now in Wisconsin. Why? If you've been watching the ads, they didn't talk about anything. They did like what they do to dog whistles. They talk about her girlfriend. Okay, that means Tammy Baldwin is gay. Well, she's been gay as long as she's been alive, and certainly she's been gay since she was a U.S. representative and a senator. And what does that have to do with how good of a legislator she is? Nothing. But for a lot of people, that could be a deciding factor. And we have been so programmed. We have all these little subliminal things that we have, and then advertising triggers that, right? And that's what you're seeing. So I clearly understand, because Michelle said, when I was telling, hey, Tammy Baldwin's up by 8 points, Michelle was going like, don't rest on that, because that's going to change. And she was right. Let me think. Who did I have as guest today? I had Congressman Gabe Amo and Student Minister William Muhammad. Debo, thank you. Michelle, thank you. Carvey, thank you. Good Lord willing, Creek don't rise. Hope to talk to everybody tomorrow. And as always, go from this place in peace.
Open our eyes. Open our eyes. Lord, open our eyes. He has given us hills and mountains. He has